Hey folks, Jake from Pod Casty For Me here. This is a preview of a bonus episode from our Patreon feed, Paid Costly For Me. If you like this and you want to hear more, you can head on over to patreon.com/podcastyforme, where for $5 a month, you can get a new bonus episode every other week. That's patreon.com/podcastyforme. Enjoy!
In terms of what the movie does with the structure, how complex it is, and especially the moment that it was made, I think it is a watershed moment in this type of filmmaking, in Hollywood genre film.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very crucial because this was made at the exact moment when Universal, just as like a studio, became Universal International. I think this is the very first, or at least it was made when Universal International was formed. And
what's the distinction there? Like, what changed about the studio?
So essentially, what we conceive of now is like the big studio system. There was the majors and the minors, and the minors were ones like Republic and Columbia, and for most of the 1930s, it was Universal. Where
they were mostly like the horror house. Right?
Yeah, they would do horror. They would do like low rent series, and in the 1930s, it got sold off from the Laemmles, which were the family who started it. Mm-hmm. And by the time you get to the 40s, really, they were just rehashing, monster films, Abbott and Costello movies. You had some interesting Maria
Once you
Montez
get to Ghost of Frankenstein, you're scraping the bowl.
Yeah, but interestingly, so they would distribute often these independent producer films, like ones made by Hitchcock and films from Britain, but they weren't really an A-level studio. And it's like today now what's happening with A24, where like they're trying to transition from like just something that distributes and puts out minor budget films to something that's bigger.
So like a stationery company, primarily. You guys see this fucking notebook they're selling?
Yeah.
Ian, are you aware of this?
No, thankfully there's no universal version of that.
They're selling like a $39.99 notebook that just says like the day you watched the movie or whatever.
Wow. Okay.
The kind of thing you could get for 99 cents.
It's called College Rule.
Yeah. It freaking did, dude. Doing beer bongs and stuff. Co-eds? Come on.
I think there was an Abbott and Costello movie where like they were like, we're hanging out with co-eds, and it's like, all right, guys, you know what, Frankenstein, get in here.
Yeah, Abbott and Costello meet a girl.
I know. It was pretty surprising for them, I gotta say, but they only need each other, in my opinion.
Exactly.
I think that's right.
We learned that at the end.
But the thing with The Killers that's important is that Robert Siodmak, he was he was basically the Universal Prestige director at this point.
Right.
And he was the one who handled all the best big projects. He was the one who was afforded the most stylistic leeway. And, he
was a German guy, right? He was one of the guys who fled Germany to Hollywood along with Billy Wilder. And
he had a consistent career as a German film director, I would say, to the extent of someone like Lang before he became to Hollywood. So he very much brought this full mature style into his movies immediately. And, if there's a quintessential noir director, I think it's probably him. Like when we think of all the visual hallmarks, people talk about Hitchcock, even Lang's style isn't that heavy when you go to his movies. Like the tone is heavy, but he's not doing all the tricks and turns of, bringing this expressionist touch to, these types of stories. And Lang doesn't really make movies about detectives or whatever. Siodmak really, I think, created a template for what these movies would be. And he made, he kind of colored around the edges with them too. He made gothic melodramas. He made horror movies, so he was involved a lot in just creating the visual language of all this. Mm-hmm. And when Universal International took over, and, when the company just essentially radically transformed from a B-movie studio, and they said, we want quality instead of quantity. And it was a moment in the post-war era where ticket sales were dropping. And so they just focused on let's actually make good movies instead of a bunch of junk. And The Killers really, when you look at it from that historical perspective, it's essentially the template for what became the good version of a Universal picture, where afterwards you would have like the Douglas Sirk films and the Anthony Mann films, and just a whole bunch of great like Westerns who were made by reliable craftsmen like William Whitney or what's his name? George Sherman. You know, you would have all these guys come into the Universal fold who would never work there before. And so this is really the first film that, like, because Universal before this film, I don't think, like, you can literally look at like the previous year's movies. It's not amazing, you know, like when we think of like what that is, it's like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, too. Hitchcock makes Shadow of Doubt for Universal in 42.
Well,
but
no, Universal distributes it, so they don't make it.
Right.
Like, that's the thing, is that they're distributing
they're
these movies,
playing
but they're
around with it, right? They're sort of like they like consider, but then it's another 4 years until they have this. They start working with Mark Hellinger, who this is also sort of his debut as producer, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And they start working with more independent producers like that who help them elevate their image out of the crap space and away from like the Republics and the Columbias of the world.
Yeah.
But so basically this is the beginning of the Universal golden age of film, I think, because they came to it much later than the other studios did, because Warner Brothers became a studio in the 30s. And all the other studio, like MGM was always basically an A studio. Paramount was always an A studio.
Right. They were the two big ones. Too.
I think the skill at which it's made, the way Siodmak brilliantly stages this movie as a series of like almost interlocking chambers where you're delving deeper and deeper and deeper into every single one. It honestly, it kind of reminded me of Hou Hsiao-hsien's Flowers of Shanghai, in that it has this like cloistered feeling of like artificiality and inner space, and trying to inhabit a space of subjectivity that is not at any point being inhabited by a single perspective. Like, you're constantly jumping from one to the other. And I think you get that plurality of viewpoints that is, again, like, you know, very much a post-Citizen Kane thing. And distilling all of that, I think my major observation, like, I think this is my thought when comparing the two versions, at least, and maybe we can then talk about the Siegel version after this, is that with the Siodmak film, he is a classicist director. He is very interested in presenting a world that makes geographic and logistical and emotional sense out of things that are happening in like, it's a space that is coherent in and of itself. And I think that's the essence of classicist filmmaking, where you have, you know, your John Fords and your Lubitsch's and like directors who more or less create a world that is not reducible to any of its parts, right? The camera represents an objective point of view, even if it's delving in and out of these various elements. It's never trying to supersede any of them as like, okay, this is the one we're going into, this is the perspective. And Siodmak, he's creating atmosphere more than he's creating emotions, and I think he's like really great at that.
Want to hear the rest of the episode? Go to patreon.com/podcasty for me and sign up for just $5 a month. We're sorry we do this.